Joining me now, Democratic strategist and former advisor to the Obama campaign, Amisha Cross, and Charlie Dent, former Republican congressman from Pennsylvania. So to you, Charlie, what is this operation going to look like? And is there a real plan? What are the risks, both from a humanitarian and political standpoint?
Well, if Donald Trump has a mandate, it is really to deal with the border. I suspect this Chicago operation, and I don't know what it entails at this point, but I think they're going to focus on what Kristi Noem just said. They're probably going to focus on criminals first. They will also focus on those who have valid removal orders against them, which is a very significant number of people in this country. They'll also probably focus on people who arrived most recently. That's what I suspect they will do. And I believe they actually have a mandate to deal with that particular element of the population in this country that is here unlawfully. So that's what I think they're going to do. I think Tom Homan's job, the border czar, is going to try to set expectations and also introduce a dose of reality as to what can be done. I can tell you for a fact, removing people who even have valid removal orders against them is not easy. There's a big number of them. A lot of the host countries won't take them back, and I think Homan understands this. I hope President Trump does.
Amisha, there's a new poll from the New York Times, and it shows that 87% of Americans support deporting immigrants who are here illegally and have criminal records. But will there be that level of support for what is actually carried out? And what did Kristi Noem's testimony tell you about the Trump administration plans?
Well, to answer the first part of your question, I think it depends on how they carry it out and to which communities are the most activated. As somebody who's a native Chicagoan, I think that it is very disappointing to watch Trump choose Chicago as his first place to enact these radical deportation plans. But I'm also old enough to remember when the governor of Texas and the governor of Florida used buses and planes to send migrants to Chicago. Attacking sanctuary cities and sanctuary states is one of Trump's top priorities. It's something that he talked about during his last round in the White House. Is something he talked about on the campaign trail. When you have someone who has said time and time again that the immigrants are taking your jobs, that they are raping your children, that you are basically demonized them to an extent that scares communities, I think that there's something that we have to really look at here. He said that they were the reason why there was a housing crisis across America. We know that those things aren't true. We know that migrant crime is amongst the lowest level of crime in this country. But he repeated it on loop for years that extended long beyond his actual, re-election campaign. And Kristi Noem is going to follow the policies of the Trump administration. She's going to follow the policies of Project 2025, as will all of his nominees. America voted and they made a choice. Part of it was buying into a narrative, I would argue a false narrative that Donald Trump put out. The other part is fear tactics and a media echo chamber that was anxious to hear and not actually push backs against what Donald Trump was saying has actually bolstered a lot of his claims.
Okay. Charlie, let's move to the confirmation hearings because Pete Hegseth was certainly questioned about his commitment to the Geneva Convention. Let's take a listen to that.
Are you saying that the Geneva Convention provisions, which clearly outlaw torture of prisoners, should not apply in the future?
Senator, how we treat our wounded, how we treat our prisoners, the applications of the Geneva Conventions are incredibly important. But we would all have to acknowledge that the way we fought our wars back when the Geneva Conventions were written are a lot different than the asymmetric, non-conventional environment of counterinsurgency that I confronted in Iraq and Afghanistan.
So remember Hegseth advised Trump to pardon soldiers convicted of war crimes. Your thoughts on Hegseth's hearing? Will he be confirmed? And how then could he change the way the Department of Defense runs?
Well, first of all, I think he probably does get confirmed at this point. But I would also say I was disappointed with the hearing. I really did not think there were enough substantive questions, like the one you just presented there from Senator King. That was a substantive question. But they really didn't get into issues of competence. I mean, everybody's been talking about the drinking and his problem with women, but they haven't really talked about competence in the case of Hegseth. For example, what are they asking about? How is artificial intelligence going to affect warfighting? What are we going to do about readiness, retention? I mean, I didn't hear those types of questions about what are needs will be for the coming conflicts that I hope don't happen, but to prepare for them. I didn't hear any of that. And the few times there were questions, we didn't get much of an answer. So I think that was a real, for me, a disappointment in this whole hearing. It wasn't substantive enough. It was really more gotcha, and they wanted to get him on all his personal problems, but not really address the substantive issues that this Department of Defense is going to be facing going forward.
You aren't alone in that argument, but let me ask you, Amisha, do you expect Hegseth to be confirmed? And I'm curious your biggest takeaway from the hearing so far.
I absolutely expect him to be confirmed. I don't think that there is going to be a smoking gun that comes out now after the FBI has already done its investigation into Hegseth. I agree with Charlie Dent here. It was disappointing to watch some of the questions because as noxious as that man's personal life happens to be, his wife knows who she's married to, and I wasn't here for another Real Housewives episode. I think it's most important to put on notice that this is a guy who is fundamentally unqualified for the position at which he seeks. And for a party that continues to say DEI basically just gives people a leg up who are unqualified, this is a guy who they opened the door for without paying any attention to the fact that not only is he unqualified for that level of management experience, that budget, nor the decisions that he would have to make. This is a guy who literally ran 2 veterans organizations into the ground.